You wake up, no alarm, no boss, no Monday. Money doesn't exist, your phone doesn't exist, there's no email, no meeting, no one asking you to circle back. What do you actually do with your day? Here's the twist. You already know the answer, because your ancestors lived it for roughly 300,000 years. And the truth about what they did with all that time is going to make you a little uncomfortable. We've been sold a myth. Cavemen grunting, starving, dying at 30. It's mostly false. Yes, archaeologists have found weapons and butchered bones, but they've also found 40,000-year-old flutes carved from bird bone. Shell jewelry traded hundreds of miles on foot. No roads, no maps. Graves where elderly, disabled people were buried with flowers after surviving decades on the care of others. That's not a species locked in survival panic. That's a species with time on its hands. In the 1960s, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins studied the last surviving hunter-gatherer societies, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of the Kalahari, Aboriginal groups in Australia, and clocked their actual work hours. The result upended everything. Just 3 to 5 hours a day spent hunting, gathering, cooking, and maintaining tools. The rest of the day, genuinely free. Talking, resting, playing, making art nobody needed to survive. Sahlins called them the original affluent society, not because they owned things. They owned almost nothing, deliberately, since everything you own is something you have to carry. They were affluent because they had the one resource every modern person is quietly starving for. Unscheduled time. Now compare that to you. Job, commute, emails, chores. The average adult is left with maybe 2.5 hours of real leisure a day, most of it swallowed by a screen engineered to keep you anxious enough to keep scrolling. Sit with that. We are working longer hours, with less rest, than people who hunted animals using sharpened sticks. If that just recalibrated how you think about your own day, hit subscribe, because it only gets stranger from here. Picture a group sitting around a fire at dusk. The most striking thing isn't the fire or the animal skins. It's the talking. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups suggest up to 70% of their social time was spent in conversation. Gossip, jokes, arguments, flirting, old stories retold for the 100th time. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, of Dunbar's number fame, the idea that humans can maintain roughly 150 stable relationships before the cognitive load becomes unmanageable, argued that language itself evolved as social grooming. Other primates bond by physically picking through each other's fur, one relationship at a time. Once groups grew too large for that math, we needed something faster. Talking solved it. You can verbally groom 5 people around a fire at once. So every pointless phone call, every night spent laughing about nothing, that isn't wasted time. That's 50,000-year-old software, still running. Here's one that will mess with how you think about sleep. Historian Roger Eckhurch spent 2 decades digging through diaries and medical texts, and found strong evidence that before artificial lighting, most people didn't sleep in one 8-hour block. They slept in 2 phases. First sleep, from dusk to midnight, then genuine calm wakefulness for an hour or 2, then second sleep until dawn. That middle-of-the-night waking wasn't insomnia. People used it to talk with family, pray, think, sometimes solve problems the busy daylight hadn't allowed them to crack. Gas lighting, and later electric lighting, compressed that natural rhythm into the single block we now call normal. So if you wake at 2 a.m. feeling oddly calm and alert, you're just missing the fire and the darkness. And forget the word primitive. Their craftsmanship demanded real, practiced skill. Take flint knapping, striking stone in precise sequences to produce a sharp, consistent blade. It sounds simple. It isn't. One wrong strike shatters the piece. And archaeologists who've tried to relearn it say true proficiency takes years. We've also found sewing needles carved from bone over 50,000 years ago, eyes painstakingly drilled using only stone tools, because someone wanted their stitching to be good. Then there's the art, and this is the part that should stop you cold. The cave paintings at Chauvet-Pont d'Arc in France are roughly 36,000 years old. Not crude scribbles, but dynamic scenes of horses mid-gallop and bison turning their heads. Some artists use the natural curves of the cave wall to give animals 3-dimensional form, so that under flickering firelight, the figures appeared to breathe and move. That's essentially cinematic technique, built into solid rock 36,000 years ago, for zero survival benefit. Someone just had something to say. They also played, constantly and seriously. Wrestling, foot races, and throwing competitions appear independently across ancient cultures with zero contact with one another. About as strong a signal as you can get that a behavior is hardwired into us. For children, play wasn't separate from education. It was the entire curriculum. You learned to hunt by playing at hunting, and learned to manage conflict by competing, and sometimes losing, in games with real stakes. But the detail that hits hardest is how they cared for each other. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal skeleton, one arm amputated, partially blind, hearing badly damaged, lived to roughly 40, genuinely old for the time. He could not have hunted or gathered effectively. By any cold survival calculus, he was a liability. His group fed and protected him anyway, for years. In Spain, the skull of a child with Down syndrome shows they survived to around age 8, 500,000 years ago. A level of sustained care that goes far beyond simple instinct. Skeletons with healed fractures tell the same story. Someone fed and protected that person for the months it took the bone to knit back together. This wasn't cold survival. This was community, chosen on purpose, at real cost. And when they hunted, it bordered on superhuman. Before the bow appeared around 70,000 years ago, humans hunted primarily through persistence, tracking a large animal and simply following it, on foot, through the hottest hours of the day, for 5, 8, sometimes 10 hours, until it collapsed from heat exhaustion and could be finished by hand. This works because humans are among the only mammals that cool through sweating rather than panting, letting us keep moving in heat that stops almost everything else. Your glutes, your flat feet, your long legs, none of that is accidental. You were built, joint by joint, to out-endure prey under a blazing sun. Even genuine rest looked different for them. Neuroscience has identified the default mode network, brain regions that activate when your attention isn't locked onto any external task, linked to daydreaming and creative processing. It only switches on during real, unfilled mental silence. Modern life almost never allows that. There's always a podcast or notification competing for the gap. Ancient humans sat by firelight most evenings with nothing but their own thoughts, night after night. Out of exactly that boredom came the earliest stories. About the stars, the dead, how the world was made, the ancestors of science, philosophy, and art itself. So here's the real question. Strip away the phone, the job, the noise, and picture the fire again. Would you actually want to go back?